Rich Mancinelli, and welcome to another edition of Mayor's Forum. Tonight's topic will be the Pascack Mental Health Center. Formed in 1971, the Pascack Mental Health Center is an independent, nonprofit agency offering a wide variety of mental health services in the Pascack Valley area. Joining me tonight is Robert Pacino, the president of the Pascack Mental Health Center, and Dr. Anthony Ruvolo, the executive director of the Pascack Mental Health Center. Gentlemen, thank you both for joining me tonight. Bob, where exactly is the Pascack Mental Health Center located in, and what area does it service?
Well, we're located in Park Ridge. We're on the corner of Park Avenue and Kindercamack Road in the First Fidelity Bank building on the second floor. We serve principally the towns of Park Ridge, Hillsdale, Montvale, and Woodcliff Lake. However, we do extend into the areas adjacent to these towns and have in the past serviced people from those communities. We place priority on those people who live in the four towns, but we have not ever turned anyone away, and we will never turn anyone away.
How do people find out about the center?
Mostly by referral from people who have used the services of the center. We are listed in the Yellow Pages, and we do run articles from time to time in the local newspapers, Community Life, etc., but I would say primarily through referral.
By word of mouth is really
Tony, what kind of services does the center provide?
Basically, the services we provide are psychotherapy. The form that takes is individual therapy, group psychotherapy. We treat families, and we provide marital counseling. There's also an outreach program for people who are unable to come to the center. We have a counselor who goes to the homes of the handicapped and the aged, and we also have, we're kind of unique in that we provide play therapy, which is, and we have a room set aside for therapists to work with children. Most of the therapists are trained in that area, and it's a pretty unique setting.
Now, when you say family services, when an individual member of the family has a problem with the family group, or does the whole family come in to deal with the problem? How exactly would you respond to a problem?
Basically, what happens is that either a parent or someone from the school system may call and refer someone to the center, and we'll make the contact with the parent generally first, and advise them of our services, and meet a youngster or adult, whoever the case, and what we do is make an assessment of the problem and make recommendations to them, and take a history in that time. And then once those recommendations are made, we then try to implement them by providing them with one of the forms of services that we offer.
If there's a conflict of a family member within the family structure, do you use other family members for support, or does that antagonize the situation? How exactly would you deal with something like that?
Well, it really depends on the cooperation of the people involved. If the family members are willing to and be cooperative, and there is a conflict, what we generally do is try to work with the person who has begun the referral, and then involve the other family members if it's appropriate. Sometimes what we see as a conflict between family members is really a conflict for that person alone, and so we would provide treatment for that one person. If it involves more people, and if the conflict does extend to other people in the family, we then would involve the other people if they're willing to come in.
So it's conceivable a lot of times the conflict could obviously be an outside conflict, but the individual brings it and, I guess, vents it through the family? Is that part of a problem?
That's a possibility, yeah,
okay.
Sometimes.
Now, you mentioned an outreach program to the elderly and the handicapped. I guess, you know, the elderly and the handicapped, I would imagine, have the same kind of problems we have. Would the fact that they're homebound with limited access result in a different kind of therapy or service you would provide to them?
Not necessarily. In a way, the therapist who does go out to the home is as well trained as the ones in the center. She's supervised by our chief psychologist, and myself, and that's the person who goes out there is Sylvia Strawn. She's been working with us for a year now, and the program has gradually moved to been quite successful. Basically what is provided is an opportunity for people to talk with the therapist when normally they would not have anyone at all to talk with except by phone. And since often people cannot get up to us either because of age or physical handicap, it's really been quite helpful.
Bob, the center is run by a voluntary board of directors. What type of people make up the board, and what kind of commitments or responsibilities do they have as a board member?
Well, we have members of the board who come from all walks of life. We have educators, we have people who are involved in the business world, in the areas of finance, banking. We have a social worker, we have an attorney, we have homemakers, we have people from just about every area who each in his or her own way make contributions based upon their strengths, which gives the board great flexibility and gives a lot of strength to the board. Now, as far as what the functions are of the members of the board, generally the board acts as a unit, and its function is to direct the activities of the center, provide policy, give guidance to Dr. Ruvalo, and so that he can supervise his staff on a day-to-day basis. We, the board, are responsible for fundraising. We are responsible for budget and whatever else may come up that needs our attention. We do not run the center on a day-to-day basis. That's Tony's job. But we give him the guidance that he needs to perform his duties, and we also give him the support that he needs.
In terms of your volunteer board members, is there a length of term of office they serve?
There's a 2-year term, and generally most people stay on for, or stand for re-election, if you will. It's not a formal structure as such. Every 2 years, those people whose terms have expired come up for reappointment, if you will, not re-election, but it's reappointment. And as I say, most people tend to stay on well beyond their initial commitment.
Now, at the center itself, on a day-to-day basis, what kind of staffing is there, Bob or Tony, if you wanted to?
Well, I think Tony can better answer that.
We have basically we have some 15 therapists on staff, some of which are trained in the area of social work, and some people are trained to be psychologists. Most of them are people who have completed their doctorates or who are on the way to completing their doctorates, or people who are have at least a master's in social work and further training beyond that. Many of them have training in specialized fields as family therapy. We have 2 psychiatrists on staff also who provide evaluative service consultation for us with the therapist, and also provide medical monitoring. Basically, they could provide monitoring the medication that people need on a regular basis. The therapist often works with the psychiatrist, and in a cooperative venture to help the patient in terms of their treatment.
Now, you report to the board. Now, what kind of structure is set up in terms of meetings, and what kind of reporting do you have back to the board?
All right. Well, I might make one comment that Tony is also a member of the board. We decided that several years ago that it was very important not only for the executive director to report to the board in terms of what's going on a day-to-day basis, but that individual should be an integral part of the board's deliberations. So Tony was appointed to the board. Now, Tony, obviously as a director, he attends the board meetings and participates in the goings-on, but he also is responsible for making a monthly report to the board on his activities as executive director. The board is comprised also of an executive committee. The executive committee is responsible for acting on matters that do not really require the entire board to be present to make decisions. This power has been given to the executive committee under the bylaws of the center.
Okay. Tony, the Pascack Valley area in particular has seen a tremendous amount of corporate growth over the last several years. I would imagine with that growth come different kind of problems or situations that might require some professional services. Exactly what type of programs do you offer to, say, a corporate environment versus a residential?
Well, to reach out to the corporations, because often we've asked for their help, and we feel at this point that we've been able to provide some help by offering a stress management program. At this point, we've been invited by State of Real Estate at one point about a year ago to meet with their staff. We're invited to meet with the Marriott, which we worked out a program in stress management for them for a number of months. We're working with 3M now at this present time. We feel that the program is successful because of the fact that people are becoming aware of the fact that stress is a very important part of everybody's life, and that it's not necessarily something bad, that can be something good, and that if we can cope better with stress, that we can be more productive. And corporations are recognizing this and accepting the fact that if we look at stress issues realistically, that their employees do better in their everyday life and also in their work world. So it's been beneficial, and everyone has enjoyed the success of the program. But I think that what's important is that we would like people to know that it is available, and we, as a matter of fact, have begun some mailings to address people in the area to tell them that we are available for this type of program.
Now, what would be the typical length of time for a stress management program with a corporation?
Well, frankly, Richard, it depends on the fact that you'd want to take a look at what the corporation needs are. We'd need to assess that. We would walk in, sit down with them, and discuss what exactly their concern is and what the employee needs are. It could be from frankly, a talk where they would begin to look at stress in their lives, or it could go into much more in-depth programs, which would involve workshops where they would use remedial approaches, relaxation training, could involve issues surrounding role-playing and feedback to them in their everyday lives in terms of their work. And it really, what amounts to is that it really all depends on what the nature of the problems are that the company presents.
It's a group approach?
Generally, it's a group approach, although some companies have sent us individuals who have a particular stress situation that's affecting them personally and particularly.
Now, in a group environment, would a corporation mix a middle management with upper senior management? Is it an isolated group, or is it a mix?
It's a good question. I think what generally happens is that we have met with people on a mixed basis, particularly at the Marriott. We were able to meet with everyone from all levels, from the general manager down, and they were very receptive to what we had done there, and we're from the chef to the general manager, we're sitting down together, sharing difficulties of how to work out timelines and deadlines and that type of
Well, I guess it makes sense, and also gives an appreciation, because no matter what level of job one has, there's stress that comes
Sure.
with it. And while somebody at the lower end of the ladder might think their stress is not as important as, say, someone in senior management, it is the same level in their own mind. Tony, the programs, do you do on-site presentations, or the corporations come to the center? How do you work that with them?
Well, we at this point, we have gone out to the corporations. We do have facilities for people to come to us, but at this point, they have found it more convenient for their employees to stay where they are, so there's not a big inconvenience to the corporations themselves and the employees' work schedules. So I have gone out with other staff people and worked with them on the on-site place.
Now, do you have a relationship within the school community also?
There's a number of things done through the schools. There have been a number of speaking engagements that's been going on with a lot of talk with the young people, particularly adolescents, in the high schools, almost all the high schools. There's also, we have opened up the center each year to an open house for the last 3 years. And the purpose of that was to just allow them to come up and talk with us and get to know us again and kind of remind them of our presence, and also for them to just kind of keep the relationship going. It's really quite helpful to everyone, kind of enjoy ourselves, relax for a while, which is often a good feeling that evolves.
Sounds like you run some terrific programs. Bob, where do we get the funds to run the center?
Our primary source of funds is, of course, our fees. Second to that, and the only other source of funds that we have, are donations, individual, corporate, and from local governments of the towns that we serve. Of the donations, our largest source is obviously from individuals, and that is arranged through an annual phone-a-thon that we run, wherein we ask for volunteers from our communities to come and sit down at a telephone and make some calls for us, kind of like what you see on the public television networks. The types of people or volunteers that we get come from civic organizations, church groups, the schools. We have a tremendous participation from the schools. We've had participation from the Boy Scouts. We get everybody from the community involved who wants to get involved, and we always welcome volunteers. We advertise well in advance of our phone-a-thon. We make phone calls. We do all kinds of things to ask people to come and help us, because without their help, we can't generate the funds to help the communities.
Now, when exactly is the phone-a-thon? When does it
The
take place?
phone-a-thon is run in late September, early October. What we try and do is we try and schedule so it doesn't conflict with things like the World Series and elections and things of this sort, because over the years we have found that this is a distraction from people focusing in on things like making donations. And we try and make it easy on them too, and that we want them to be relaxed and say, yes, we will contribute, rather than feel obligated or just to get rid of us.
Okay. You mentioned before the phone-a-thon direct payment from clients. What kind of arrangements do you have with them?
Our policy at the center is we base our fee to individuals on ability to pay, and that translates into a sliding scale, which starts at a point, and based on our evaluation of the income level of the individual, can drop down to a very, very small amount. This will vary, obviously, when we have teenagers and other people who have either no income or very limited incomes. We try and get it as low as we can, and if there is no income at all and the treatment is needed, we will still perform that service.
How much success have you had in terms of fundraising with the corporate community? Do you approach them differently?
In the past, we have approached the corporate community as we've approached the individual solicitations with hat in hand, so to speak, and we said, well, we're here, we need support, we ask for your support your contributions if you can. And the corporations have responded, and they've responded well. But we have grown, and we have developed a very, very professional staff under Dr. Ruvalo, and we've developed programs such as the stress management, where now we have something more concrete that we can present to the corporations when we go to them and say, well, you've been very generous in the past. We certainly will welcome any additional generosity, but now we've got something to offer you. And I think that has been reflected in some of the success that we've had with the stress management program and the response that we've gotten during the very short time that we have actually gone out to solicit.
Now, I think it's important to note that you do not receive federal or state monies.
That's correct. Several years ago, when federal funding was stopped to the center, we were still eligible for state funding. But in looking at the results that we would gain and the effort that we would have to put in terms of reports and clerical work and record keeping and things of this sort, it was the opinion of the board at that time, and still is the opinion of the board, that it would cost us more to generate the paperwork to support the funding than it was worth.
So in a sense, it's truly a community-based center.
That's right. We are supported solely by private funds. The only public funds that we get are the ones that I mentioned before, where we will go to the towns that we serve principally on an annual basis, and we will request that whatever they feel, whatever room that they can make for us in their budgets, we would appreciate. And the only basis we have for going to them is that we do provide the service principally to the citizens of those towns.
Okay. Tony, many changes in our society have taken place since the center opened back in 1971. Obviously, the demographics have changed. You now see two parents out there in the workforce. What type of problems have been caused with these kind of changes, and specifically, how have they hit hardest, I guess, with the children?
I don't feel that the work situation has contributed as much as the fact that there have been many families where divorce or separation takes place. Those are the areas that we've been able to, I think, been able to be more helpful. At one point last year, we were running some 3 groups for all different ages of children, and research shows that when children meet in groups, they do better than they would even individually surrounding the issue of divorce, because in a way, children can see that other children are going through the same problem, and that they're learning how to cope with some of the situations that evolve from parents who are separated. The parents have generally, both parents want to cooperate with the center in helping the children, and also including themselves. Often this is a very stressful time in their life, and so going through counseling and being able to talk about your feelings and the issues surrounding the divorce situation can make things better for themselves.
Bob, where's the direction of the board going now in terms of services or different fundraising techniques?
Well, as I said before, one of our primary areas of expansion is in the corporate sector, particularly in the area in which we are located, where there are numerous facilities of large corporations. We feel that we can perform a service to those people, as well as we can to the people who live in the communities that we principally serve. I might also add that regardless of whether or not an individual is a citizen of one of the 4 communities, if that individual works for a company that is located in one of our 4 communities, we would still consider those people as being principal people who we would service. We will provide service to anyone who needs it, but we have in our bylaws, we have indicated that you do not necessarily have to live in the town. If you work for a company in one of the 4 towns, that is still just as good as living in the town.
As in all cases, we've run out of time. Believe it or not, I'd like to thank my 2 guests, Bob Pacino and Tony Ruvala, for joining me tonight. Until next time, good night.